ATP, a Master CFI, II, and MEI. Gary is also an expert in Garmin avionics and ForeFlight. He has instructed over 200 students and is a Young Eagles flight leader. He's also the 2014 Long Beach District Instructor of the Year and FAA Safety Team Member of the Year. There are 97,000 flight instructors in the U.S. Less than 800 have ever been named Master Instructor. California only has 14. And now, please welcome from Big Bear, California, Gary Reeves.
Good evening, everybody. I am Gary. Thanks for joining us. There will be several hundred on this webinar. Over 800 have registered. If you have any technical problems, you can call GoToWebinar Tech Support. The number is in your chat. However, this entire video will be available on our website, pilotsafety.org, for free tomorrow, and you can watch it and rewatch it to your content. Only people who are here live will be getting wings credit, but anybody can watch it as much as they want tomorrow. So if you care about safety, I hope you join pilotsafety.org. It's a free membership, and you'll get a newsletter once a week with pilot safety tips and stuff about our free classes and our few paid classes. We spend about $1,500 a month putting on free classes all over the country. Our webinar subscription alone is $700 a month, and we're a volunteer group. So the way we pay for it is we sell some DVDs, and once a month we do paid webinars, and we do the very rare paid class. So if you can support us and you like what we do, we would love for you to do it, but just being a member is always free. Also, I would really encourage you to join the FAA safety team. Several years ago, the FAA was mandated by Congress to reduce general aviation accidents, and at the same time had their budget cut for safety down to essentially zero. There are just a very few paid FAA staff members still with the safety program, usually one per FSDO. And if it weren't for volunteer instructors like myself and student pilots, you don't have to be an instructor to help. If it weren't for the volunteers, we would not have a wings program at all. So you don't have to be an instructor. Contact your local FSDO, or you can send me an email, and I can certainly help you sign up. Now, I volunteer for pilot safety. What I do for a living and how I support my wife and my dogs and keep firewood in the cabin at Big Bear is I own a company called masterflighttraining.com. I am a master flight instructor, one of the few, and I'm also the Southwest Region Instructor of the Year, which means I'm in the top 8 and in for the running of 2016's Instructor of the Year. And what I'm really good at is Garmin training. Anything Garmin, I'm an expert at. ForeFlight, FlyQ, instrument training, emergency training, and we do some really cool mountain flying classes. I travel all over the U.S. and Canada. I'm going to Puerto Rico this year. So if you would like me to train you where you live, masterflighttraining.com, and I'd be certainly happy to help. We have a few class rules. Number 1, please do not talk about the Fight Club. Actually, just don't ask me a whole lot of questions about the SKU-T weather charts, because if you ask me about SKU-T weather charts, I really don't get them either. However, one of the great things about being a free member of Pilot Safety is you can click on Ask the Experts at pilotsafety.org. Pick the master instructor you'd like to talk to. We have 3 of them in California that volunteer for us. And you're going to pick John Mahaney. Any weather questions, just pick John Mahaney. Send him a question, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Now remember, we're happy to answer questions for free anytime over at pilotsafety.org, but they must be brief, and you have to give us a day or two. We're all volunteers. What we're going to do today is help you create an account, show you how to add aircraft, talk about the best part, which is the next generation briefings, and some of the advanced services. So let's start with creating an account. What you want to do is go to www.1800WXBrief.com. And over on the right-hand side, you're going to see a box where you can log in, or you can create a new account. And creating a new account is very simple. We're going to log in with my username and password for tonight, and that will take you to the 1800WXBrief dashboard. Now you'll notice at the top all of your options: home, pilot, dashboard, weather. This is the pilot dashboard, and you can schedule it or you can program it to show you the things you want to see. We're going to do all that, but the first thing we're going to do is click on account, and then we're going to click on user. So there's my information. A little out of date on the hours, but pretty close. Then what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down, and you can add phone numbers. And you can add as many phone numbers as you want to add. What's really cool is I just put my cell phone in there. When I actually call 1-800-WX-BRIEF because of caller IDs, they actually recognize me. They say, "Is this Gary, and are you calling about this plane?" I say, "Absolutely." The nice thing is then let's go down and add some emergency contacts, and you can pick the different types of phone you want to do. By the way, you should add more than one emergency contact. I happen to be married, and of course my wife is listed as an emergency contact, but I also list my parents and other people because my wife typically flies with me. So you should add more than one, especially if your primary emergency contact is a person that's always in the plane with you. Now, let's go down to email addresses. There's one of my email addresses. When I set up an account, if you're a flight instructor, whenever I set up an account for a student, I actually add me as an additional email. That way, as their instructor, I get an email every time they do anything, every time they get a brief, every time they file or open and close a flight plan. So you can add several email addresses there as well. And then we'll just click on Save at the bottom. Now let me show you how to add an aircraft. So after you've done user, you just click one tab over, which is aircraft. And then we're going to click add new aircraft. Okay, now this is the most user-friendly website I have ever seen in 25 years of being really good on computers. I got to tell you, this is the most user-friendly website I have ever seen. If there's anything you don't understand, all you have to do is hover your mouse over the text, and it will pop up a little help dialog box telling you exactly what it wants. So in this case, we'll put in November 1482 Yankee. Now, aircraft type, again, you could hover over aircraft type and it would tell you what it expects, but it's probably easiest for most people just to hit the little magnifying glass or the search feature. So we're going to click on the search feature. And then right in the text dialog box, we're going to type the word Cessna. Then we're going to click search, and it'll come up with a bunch of different Cessnas, and we're going to click Cessna 172. It does not matter in any way what model 172 you have. Piper people are notorious for trying to put in PA32R-301T with a wing on top. You're just a Piper 32. everything is considered the same because they're looking for general characteristics. So you don't have to put Cessna 172 SP or anything like that. Just C-172. They're all the same as far as Lockheed Martin is concerned. Okay, so we'll click that and then we'll click the select button. That will take us back. Now, position reporting device type is a gadget you need to buy. I really do think everyone should have one. I actually tend to favor Global Star, and Global Star makes a device called the Spot. And what this does is it actually improves tracking and cuts down your rescue time by hours. And I'll actually show you how to work it later. But my favorite personal brand is the Global Star Spot. It's an extra satellite communicator that you actually carry in the plane. So I would have selected Spot and then put in my device ID. Then let's click on Aircraft Color. And all you have to do is just click every color that applies to your airplane. So for 82 Yankee, it's white and red, and we'll just click those. Now, the only thing is it puts it in alphabetical order. I actually prefer putting them in majority order. So I reverse that because the plane is mostly white with just a little bit of red. And Paul Ogwin, I'm really sorry, I'm bad with last names. Paul has a great name. Great question. Would the Global Star Spot be good for hot air balloons? Absolutely, it would, because it shows your exact position the whole time. Okay. Now, if you hover over fuel capacity, for the US flight plans, you just put in whatever capacity it is. So I'm in the habit of doing everything in 4 digits. So I put 0038. Now, don't put total capacity. Make sure you're only putting your usable fuel capacity. And if you ever have any questions, your usable fuel capacity is always by law labeled right on the fuel selector. So remember, don't put total capacity, only put the gas you can actually get to your usable. Let's go back. If I hover over home base, it wants a 3 to 4 letter alphanumeric airport or heliport identifier. And let's use the ICAO version. So I'm going to go ahead and put in Long Beach, Lima Golf Bravo with a K in front. Home base phone number. And I just put in the number for pilotsafety.org. If you rent airplanes, you should put in the flight school phone because they can call there looking for you if you're ever late. Aircraft equipment, they just want 1 letter. So if you click on the drop-down box, what do you got? Well, this one's a 1962 172C. So we're going to be a slant uniform, which means we have no DME, but we do have a transponder with mode C. I wouldn't rush out and buy any mode S transponders anytime soon. They'll be replaced with the ADS B transponders, which are legally mandated in 2020. But for now, this is what we've got in that plane. So we'll select uniform. Airspeed, I only wish this little Cessna had something with a Mach, but probably not. So it wants knots, 2 to 4 digits, and I'll just put in 100. Now, I don't put the top true airspeed that it can possibly do. If the true airspeed for this particular Cessna is 110, I downgrade it a little bit and put it 100. The great thing and only slight downside to Lockheed Martin is the flight planning is hyper accurate. So I like to always underestimate my speed so they don't dispatch search and rescue if the crosswinds are a little stronger than I thought they were. So I always underestimate speed and I overestimate fuel burn. So this particular model has a true airspeed of 110. That's why I put 100. Then we're going to do ICAO, and you should actually go ahead and fill this out. We're going to go ICAO. Everybody's going to need to get used to it, but it's slightly different than what you're used to for the U.S. domestic plans. So just click on the search box. We're going to click aircraft equipment, and it's 1 to 64 characters. You really need to use the helper dialog, that little magnifying search box. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to bring up this long list. Look down in the middle of the screen, CPDLC ATN VDL Mode 2. I'm going to make this really easy for everyone out there. If you don't know what that means, you don't have it in your airplane. So it's pretty simple. Now, you could select a bunch of individual components, or probably everyone out there is going to be S, which is VOR, VHF radio, and an ILS. So that's kind of a combination of several, but you can select them as individual components if you prefer. But most of you probably are going to be Sierra, and if you have a panel mount certified GPS, you would go ahead and put Slant Gulf. I am a huge fan of iPads. I'm an iPad expert. I get paid to teach one-on-one iPad instruction all over the United States and Puerto Rico now. We've got clients in Canada. I promise you, ForeFlight, FlyQ, and any handheld GPS device do not qualify for Slant Gulf because you can't ever use it as primary navigation unless you just say the words Mayday, Mayday, Mayday first. Then you can do whatever you want. But you're only allowed to select Slant Gulf if you have a TSO approved installed GPS navigator. For instance, a Garmin 430, a Garmin G1000, GTN. I have an old Garmin 300. A lot of people I know have the Benix King GPS. As long as you have a TSO factory panel mount installed FAA approved device, you can select Slant Gulf. Surveillance equipment. It's not Slant Charlie or it's not Slant Uniform like you're used to picking, and you don't just pick. So make sure you use the helper. And we're going to click on that. And in this case, it is actually Slant Charlie, which makes more sense than the FAA domestic. This is only asking what your transponder's putting out. Again, if you're a fan of ForeFlight or FlyQ and you have a nice Stratus ADS-B device, that does not count. This is only permanently installed equipment. So for now, this particular Cessna only has mode A, which is not reporting your altitude, and mode C, which of course is. Now the cruising speed is a little different. You have to actually put the letter November followed by exactly 4 digits. So I'm going to put November 0100. Let's go down to aircraft performance. Fuel unit is either gallons or for some aircraft I fly, I use pounds. I'm going to put 1.1 for the taxi fuel burn. My climb performance, it says I fly an indicated airspeed of 75, which over the ground is actually about 70. Remember, indicated does not necessarily equal ground movement, so I always decrease whatever the book says by 5. Fuel burn rate at full power, it says 7, so I make it 8. And it says I can climb at 700 feet per minute, so I put it to 500. And then cruise fuel burn is about 5.7 or 6, and I put it to 7. Descent performance, I actually will let it go up to 105 with a fuel burn rate of 4. And the best descent on the planet is about 200 to 300 feet per minute. That gives you the best increase in ground speed for the least amount of drag, but we're going to put 400. And I got all of these numbers directly out of the pilot's operating handbook, and then I fudge them a little bit. I always decrease my promised speeds, and I always increase my promised fuel, because that guarantees a safety margin. I've never run out of gas in an airplane, and this helps prevent me doing it in the future. Now, you'll notice something says provide hourly burn rates. I'm actually going to click on that, and I'm going to put hour 1, 8 gallons per hour, hour 2 and beyond, 7. Especially if you fly bigger, faster stuff, you'll know that the more gas you burn, the lighter the airplane. You go faster for actually less gas. But I recommend it for even general aviation aircraft because you probably spend a large chunk of the first hour climbing. So I actually then downgrade it to make my flight planning even more accurate. Then we just go down to the bottom of the screen. We'll click Save, and it will say that the profile was successfully updated. You'll notice my 206 4941 Foxtrot, big red and blue thing. If you ever see me, say hi, is my primary aircraft. But on my actual profile as of today, I probably have 10 or 15 different airplanes because I put in all my clients' airplanes as well. When I owned a flight school, I had all of the rental planes on there. So, all right, now let's go one tab over and click on Display Settings. This is where you get to pick what pops up on your dashboard when you first log on. And I have 3 favorite airports. I owned a flight school at Long Beach, and that's where my 206 is based. I actually live part-time up at Big Bear, which is Lima 35. And I also have a Class Charlie alternate of Santa Ana. Then I just pick the 4 graphics that I want to see every time I log up. If you don't have any favorites yet, I really recommend the surface analysis, a 12 and 24-hour surface prog, and the U.S. weather depiction. For most people, that'll give you pretty good information and a big picture overview. I do a lot of mountain flying. I do a lot of out-of-state flying, and that's kind of a big picture that I need to see right off the bat. You can then click over on Register for Advanced Services, but we're going to actually do that a little later and show you the best part about Lockheed Martin. They are amazing people. They do great in-person weather briefs. You can call them, of course, and talk to them on the phone. But I got to tell you, this next generation briefing that they do for free, by the way, well, it's free to you. The FAA pays them. But is so much better than any standard weather brief you've ever got and is much better than any tablet software provider. I still much prefer a laptop or desktop computer doing all of my flight planning and my weather briefing with 1800WXBrief.com. Now, it does actually work as a partnership with other software, including Garmin, WingX, FlyQ, and a bunch of other great programs, but it's still better just on a computer. And you can still do this actually on an iPad as well. So let me show you how great this is. We'll go back to the home page, and we're going to click on Flight Planning and Briefing, and then we're going to click on Briefing, Flight Plans, and Navlogs. And that'll take you to this draft of a flight plan. So let's click on Flight Rules and select VFR. I'm going to change the aircraft ID to 1482 Yankee. That will automatically pre-fill Cessna 172 slant uniform, 1 airplane, 100 knots. I'm going to put in an altitude of 15, which is 1,500. You have to put it in hundreds. We're going to do a pretty simple one from Long Beach on May 13th at 1:30 local. You don't have to know Zulu anytime anymore. You can just put it local time. And I'm going to say we're going to go to the Seal Beach VOR over to Santa Ana, which will take me about 10 minutes with 4 hours of fuel on board. Now, when I filed this, I actually put it in as not an actual flight with 2 people on board. Your alternate 1 and alternate 2. You actually do need 2 alternates when you fly IFR. And we have an IFR Made Easy class that explains why you always pick 2. Then there's my contact information. It pre-fills the color. And Now, this was the day before. So what I did is I'm going to fly tomorrow, but I want to get a standard weather brief to my phone 20 minutes before I get to the flight school. So I'm going to click schedule email brief. And this is everything I want. And I want it at exactly 1:10 Pacific Daylight Time. And then I'm going to click schedule email. Now, I've already registered for briefing updates. So I'm just going to click close. And I'm going to show you how good they are. This is a copy of the email I got at exactly 1:10 p.m. They are really that good. And all this stuff is free. All right, let's go back. And I'm going to click on Navlog. I'm going to select everything in the Navlog I want. And I'm going to hit continue. This will come out. I'm then going to hit print. And this is a scan of the printout. And I just wrote in the ATIS, the clearance delivery, some approach frequencies, and other things that I want. Now, I get a lot of questions. Can you use this on a private pilot or instrument check ride? Absolutely. The private pilot and all practical test standards say that a special emphasis area is on using resources, single pilot resource management. You absolutely can use this as a flight plan. Examiners expect you to use technology. And let me ask you a question if you're an examiner or an instructor listening live or watching this as a video or DVD. This is more accurate. Therefore, that makes the person more safe. You should use technology. I'll tell you, when I was teaching private pilots, that from day one, they were on an iPad with either FlyQ or ForeFlight from day one. Paper charts, plotters, and E6Bs will never be as accurate as technology if you know how to use it correctly. Now, I still taught all my students how to use the paper methods, but from day one, we always used 1800WXBrief, Lockheed Martin, and iPads because flight planning is better when it's more accurate. And this is scary accurate. Lockheed Martin is very, very good. Again, as long as you know how to use it. Let's go back and show you this cool Nextgen brief. Let me tell you, you're never going to want to call or do a DUATS briefing ever again. And I love DUATS, but this is just better. And the reason it's better is because it's easier to understand. So if I click on standard weather briefing, a warning will pop up, says, hey, it's being generated. But to get an updated briefing, resubmit the briefing. One of the most dangerous things is if you get a weather briefing 4 hours before a flight, which is totally legal, and anything changes unless you've registered for advanced services or you resubmit this, you may be missing stuff that has changed after the weather briefing. John Law has a great question. Can I get Lockheed Martin to calculate the top of climb and top of descent? No, it doesn't actually do that, but many other programs will. So if I click continue, it's going to start out with TFRs. And this is awesome. This is the power of Nextgen briefing and why I'm Lockheed Martin's biggest fan. I would wear their polo shirt if they sent me one. That's a hint to anybody listening from Lockheed Martin. I use an extra large, please. But instead of just saying there's a TFR, it actually shows one in comparison to the route. Now, I do need to warn you that Lockheed Martin, like everything else, is not perfect. And sometimes they don't show sports TFRs because it's a rolling NOTAM, meaning it's for any stadium more than like 30,000 people, for NFL, Major League Baseball, or NCAA. It also covers certain races. And sometimes it will and will not show the semi-permanent TFRs like Disneyland and Disney World, but you should know about those. It is listed, but it may not always show them, and it may not list the sports ones. So please be very careful. It's real simple. If you get a standard weather brief like this before every flight, and you always fly with flight following, you're probably never ever going to call me and say the FAA wants to investigate me. All right, so if you look at the top, this is one of the many great things. Delta, convective SIGMETs, urgent PIREPs, UUA, CWA, center weather advisory, and severe weather. You notice they're all grayed out because none of them apply to your current route. So you don't have to read through it. That was one of the hardest things about printing a 56-page double-sided DUWATS briefing, is you had to read a bunch of stuff that had nothing to do with your flight. I used to print out a 56-page DUWATS briefing and then spend 15 minutes highlighting the stuff that was important to me and then going back and reading it. I can do an entire standard weather brief in about 6 minutes because I only have to read the stuff that applies to me. So if you just click on the yellow dot tabs, that'll come up. Okay? Now, I want to show you the TFRs in ForeFlight. In a legacy weather briefing, and this is not just ForeFlight, this is if you get a DUWATS one, it will show you the temporary flight restriction, FDC NOTAM 4/3635, the LA Center Special Security Notice. And it shows a TFR, but unless you know where it is on the map. So that's why I like Lockheed Martin versus a legacy or an old-fashioned weather briefing, because it shows stuff on the map. All right, let's go ahead and click on Closed Unsafe NOTAMs. And it will tell you that Long Beach has 2 closed runways and even lets you open and print an airport diagram. Please remember, you are legally required to have an open current taxi diagram at every towered airport before you move a plane. That is not new. That's 91103 and a billion years old. If you have a runway incursion or you get lost on a runway or a towered airport environment and you don't have a taxi diagram, they're going to get you. Please make sure you always have a current taxi diagram with you. Okay? And you can print these out for free. I still print out paper charts even though I have ForeFlight and FlyQ. Got a question from the audience. Scott Gregory. Hi, Scott. Scott says, if I have a certified panel installed GPS, but the database is out of date, can I still file slant Gulf? Always. Meaning you can still use an expired database for en route navigation. You cannot shoot instrument approaches, GPS approaches, using an expired database, but you are still always slant Gulf, because you can file and fly IFR en route with an expired database legally. But you have to be able to back it up with some other method. And that's not ForeFlight or FlyQ. That's like a VOR. Okay? Great question. All right. Nothing at Santa Ana. Now let's click on adverse conditions at the top. Let's click next to it and click on the synopsis tab. And there's the surface analysis. Let's do just a real quick weather review. The strength of a low or a high has nothing to do with the little number printed next to it. The strength of the low or high is how close those gray curvy lines are. That's called isobars. So if you look at the high over the Great Lakes, it says high 1033. That's not a strong high. What makes it high is the thing nearest to it is a low, meaning it's 1 dot lower. But if you look over the Great Lakes, there's a high of 1033, and then over Oregon and Idaho border, there's a high of 1014. So the number doesn't make it high or low. What makes it high or low is what's next to it. The joke I often make is I ask people if I'm good looking. Well, kind of depends on who I'm standing next to, doesn't it? If I'm standing next to Brad Pitt, probably not. If I'm standing next to Freddy Krueger, yeah, probably got a pretty good shot at it. So highs and lows are only what they're standing next to. But the strength of the system and how strong that system is and how fast those winds are going to whip around is how close the isobars are together. So if you look back at the Great Lakes, there's that high of 1033, but there's a big area before a gray isobar. If you look the low, just west of that, the isobars are closer together. That's a stronger pressure gradient. That means the weather and the winds are going to be stronger near that one. If you look anywhere you see a line with red sunshines, that's a high. I'm sorry, not a high. That's a warm front, because warm sunshines. If you see little blue icicles, that's a cold front. If you look down over Florida, there's a warm sunshine, blue icicle, warm sunshine on different sides of the line. That is a stationary front. That's where warm and cold are button up against each other. And if you ever saw sunshines and icicles all on the same side of the line but magenta, that is an occluded front where they're all mixed together. All right, let's click on current weather. And this is going to show you color codes, just like many of the most popular iPad programs. VFR, blue is marginal VFR, red is IFR, and pink is the pigeons are walking. That's low IFR. You really shouldn't be out there in an airplane. But please remember, color codes are not enough. And you'll notice I've actually whited out all the actual METARs. You can be VFR at an airport with an overcast of 2,000 and 5 miles visibility. That doesn't mean you'll be able to get to it or even get out VFR. So color codes are great, but you actually need to look at the current METARs. And I've actually blocked all of those out to make that point. All right, let's click on some forecasts. This is the area forecast. And the neat thing, especially if you're an instructor, is to show them and zoom out on the map. This is actually the area forecast. This is coastal waters. This is Southern California. This is Washington. You can zoom out and it actually draws everything in for you. Alexander. Hey, Alexander has a great question. Can a pilot use 1800WXBrief just for practice a bunch of times to get used to it without actually intending to fly? Yeah, absolutely. You can even file flight plans if you want to. You never have to cancel a flight plan if you're not going to go, and you're never going to bother them. Anytime you file a flight plan, if you don't activate it within 1 hour of the intended time, it just drops out. Well, it's not like the biggest mistake on the planet, but it's just kind of annoying, is a lot of people will call Lockheed Martin to cancel a flight plan that they're not going to use. The briefers don't even see it unless you call and talk about it. So if you call to cancel a flight plan you filed, you're really just tying up a briefer for a couple minutes that didn't even know about you or the flight plan until you called. So unless you call them and tell them to look at it, they'll never see it. So if you ever file a flight plan you're not going to go, just ignore it. It'll drop out automatically. But for this case, you can certainly just request as many standard briefings as you want to. But it wouldn't hurt them to file 20 flight plans. They're never going to notice the difference anyway, I promise you. Great question. Thank you. All right, so now let's click on the terminal forecast. Now you'll notice, and I actually left the screen up intentionally, several screens on this weather briefing are going to show errors. And that's only ever happened once to me with Lockheed Martin. They were just having glitches on their website that day, but they do actually leave in warning flags. So if you see anything yellow, that means there's an error. It's showing the TAFs unknown. So it shows you the TAFs, but it doesn't highlight the selected time. Same thing if we clicked on winds aloft. It's not going to highlight the box. It will show you your filed plus 2,000 and your filed plus 4,000. But it's not highlighting the times that it thinks you'll do. And this is just, I got very lucky. I got a day where it was just a little bit of glitch stuff. Okay. All right, let's answer some other questions real quick. Scott Jenkins has a question. I thought the FAA was dropping area forecast as 1st of January on all knowledge tests. I had not heard that, and I owned a testing center. I'm not saying it's not possible, but the area forecast is not going away as far as I know. Emilio. Hi, Emilio has a question. Can we get the weather in plain language? Yes. And if you look at the top, I actually have it unselected. There's plain text next to Nextgen view, and I have it unselected. So yes, absolutely. And a couple other people asked the questions. Okay. Let's move on. NOTAMs. Now, again, it's going to show you obstructions, but if we click on destination, it'll show you some more. You'll notice it's got a bunch of special uses airspace, but none of them along our route, so they're not shown on the map. En route. Now, this is all great stuff, but look how it actually shows you stuff on the map. They have a bunch of LAX navs, and they actually show them to you on the map. There's one for Santa Monica, and it's shown on the map. So everything is shown graphically. And if we zoom in, it makes it even clearer. Let's go over to service. So the Compton AWAS is out of service. Hawthorne Tower is now open an hour later, thanks to a guy named Pat Carey, who fought hard to get funding for another hour. Click on obstructions, and it shows them to you right on the map. Again, you just zoom in. If you want to see all the airspace that's out there, you can click on the airspace tab, and this is really handy when you're doing some cross-country stuff. Now, I do want to make a point. I teach mountain flying, and some of these mountain day flying adventures are 3, 5, 7 days long, where we go to a different national park every day. And I was flying from Bryce Canyon to Yosemite. You're going to get a lot of real cross-country, real weather, real mountain flying stuff. But what's interesting is I did a standard weather briefing, and it said this one particular restricted area was cold, and it's never cold. So I actually called Lockheed Martin. I said, hey, and they go, oh, is this Gary about 49 or 401 Foxtrot? Caller ID. And I said, absolutely. Got a question. This particular restricted area says it's cold. And they go, yes, it is. And I never fly without flight following. And I asked flight following about 10 miles before I went into this particular restricted area, is this cold? It said, absolutely not. It's always active. Turn north immediately. You're surrounded by F-18s doing combat maneuvers. It was Area 51, Groom Lake. Now, I would have legally been okay because I had proof of a standard weather briefing. I even called and confirmed with a human briefer. But always fly without flight. Always fly with flight following. Always fly with flight following. It just didn't sound right. That's why I double check stuff. And this has happened to numerous people where they've gotten a weather briefing, said a MOA would not be active or a restricted area was cold. They went through it and then had somebody question them later. Fly with flight following every single time. What's really funny is I teach all over the world now. I'm a speaker at Oshkosh at Sun and Fun. I'm the keynote speaker at the Caribbean Aviation Expo this year in 2016. And I occasionally will have a pilot who says, no, you're wrong. I hate flight following. It's inconvenient. And I said, well, what's wrong with flight following? And somebody will say, well, they keep turning me off my route. Look, every time they turn you off your route, it's so you don't get hit by another airplane. I understand it's inconvenient not to be in midair, but come on. Seriously, flight following every time. They're protecting you from getting hit. And that's not inconvenient. That's really good service, and it's free. So take it every single time. All right, so let's click on runway, taxiway, apron, and FTC NOTAMs. And these are primarily stuff for night flying and instrument approaches. FDCs are the instrument approach NOTAMs. But you still want to look. There's runway closures, there's taxiway enclosures, and you need to mark them up on the airport diagram that you print out. Here's some NOTAMs, some general FDC NOTAMs. This is stuff about routes and airspace and everything. Remember, just because you're showing a FlyQ current map or a ForeFlight current map or a Garmin pilot map, whatever software you use, I don't care. Just because you're looking at a current map doesn't mean it's current legally. The FAA produces a map and then produces NOTAMs. And I can't tell you how many times people have showed up to an airport, called the tower frequency repeatedly, violated the Delta airspace because they did not know the tower frequency had changed. So be really, really careful that you still read all the NOTAMs. So several people that I know and trust are saying the area forecast will be discontinued sometime during 2016. And when they do, it'll just be dropped from this tab. James Roberts has a great question. Flight following, what is the shortest distance you would use it? I got to tell you, if I'm flying more than 10 minutes, I get flight following. I fly in LA. It's the busiest, most congested airspace I know of. And I gotta tell you, if I'm going from Long Beach to Corona, which is a 12-minute flight, I get flight following every single time, and I get notified of traffic at least 8 or 10 times that I did not see. So I use flight following every possible time I can. As a flight instructor, I highly encourage you to get flight following in the practice area, because you're not legally required to talk on common traffic frequencies. We've had multiple mid-air fatal collisions here in Southern California of people hitting each other in common practice areas. And I really, really recommend that you get flight following every possible time. Okay, let's move on. So flow control doesn't apply to you unless you're doing some IFR stuff in and out of Bravo and Charlie airspace. We'll move on. That's usually airline and private jet type of stuff. UOA is really interesting. Let's click on that. And that is the drone operating areas, but it's not everybody that buys a drone at Radio Shack, and those things are pretty dangerous. I gotta tell you, birds are more dangerous than drones, really, but it really is very important that you check these. These are the military drone areas, and that's what a loading screen will look like, and I'm going to show you a better briefing now. Let's look at what a real cross country is. And like I said, a lot of those screens had little errors because I got really, really lucky. It's very, very hard to catch Lockheed Martin with any glitches. I just happened to get really, really lucky. So let me show you what you're going to see when everything goes right, because it's normally what you're going to see. So let's do one. Let's do VFR 148T Yankee. It automatically pre-fills the 172 slant uniform. One airplane going at 100 knots at 7,500 feet. Now, I've already said I'm going from Long Beach to El Paso, but I want to optimize the best altitude to fly with. So if I click on Optimize, it will now pick the best altitude for the shortest time and fuel burn. And it says 7,500 feet will take me 5 hours and 34 minutes and 34.6 gallons. And it looks like the best altitude. However, you need to be very, very careful with this. This is picking the best altitude for winds aloft. This is not guaranteeing you're not going to hit several mountains along the way. So just because it picks an altitude for the best winds does not mean you're safe for terrain. Again, I'm a mountain flying guy. I teach mountain flying, and you want to be 2,000 feet over peaks when you cross them. and dodging around hills at 7,500 feet is not the great idea doing this. I came back from El Paso to Palm Springs just recently, and the lowest I would even be willing to go was 8,500, and that gave me 1,200 foot terrain clearance. And I was okay with that because I'm a mountain flying guy, but really make sure just the altitude you pick for the winds doesn't guarantee you're not going to hit stuff. And now it can even help plan a route for you if you need some help. Now, I still plan stuff on FlyQ has a desktop app. ForeFlight has a desktop app, and that's where I start my flight planning. But if you wanted to click Victor Airways and then click Find Routes, it would give you some Victor Airways. Again, not guaranteeing what altitude you need to fly those at. So I don't let this plan my flight too much, but I'll even show it to you on a map. But I don't actually let this pick my route. I pick my route before I get here. Okay. So I'm going to put from Long Beach, I'm going to stop at Palm Springs, then I'm going to go Tucson, then El Paso. Then this is really great, especially if you're a VFR only pilot. I'm going to click on Evaluate the time of my departure. I click on that, and this is awesome. It's going to show me that as long as I take off by 17:30 local time, it will be VFR the entire route, although there may be adverse conditions. That might be turbulence, it might be multiple different things. However, if I take off at 6:30 along my route, there's going to be marginal stuff. And if I take off as late as 11:30, it's going to be marginal at my departure point. So this is really great, especially if you're a California pilot. A lot of people get stuck by what's called June gloom. Okay. And June gloom is this very weak low pressure system called a trough aloft that hovers over Southern California year round. But in June gloom, it's notorious for just making it marginal haze, weak fog until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I got to tell you, this is so accurate that says it'll be VFR at 1:30. It's always been VFR at 1:30. So this is great, but especially me, because I tend to run a little bit late sometimes, this will tell me the latest I can take off. Now, look, I really want to take off at 3:30, but I got to get the dogs and I got to top it off with gas. And gee, the battery's low and needs to be charged. I know I need to get out of there by 5:30 at the latest if I want to do a straight VFR flight. So Ethan had a pretty good question. Previously clicked optimize. The line of 9,500 feet showed a shorter time en route than 7,500 feet. Why was 7,500 feet noted as the best altitude? I picked it because it burned a little less gas. Okay. So this will show you VFR, marginal VFR, IFR, and of course low IFR pink, nobody should be flying. You're not getting in or out no matter what. Never depart IFR if it's not 300 or 400 feet above the minimums on the approach to get back in. Because if you have any kind of problem, it is legal in general aviation to take off with no visibility and fog all the way to the ground. It's just really, really stupid. You always need to be able to get back in if you can. So a home airport where the 206 is based is Long Beach. The ILS will get me down to 250 feet. I refuse to take off unless I have a minimum cloud base of 400 to 500 feet. And I'm an IFR pro. I just don't take chances, single engine, single pilot. It's just not worth it. The airlines, the 121 carriers like United and American, have takeoff minimums that would not allow them to take off. I got to tell you, if JetBlue's not going, I'm not taking off either. All right. Now let's click on Standard Brief, and I'm going to show you a really good Nextgen brief. There is an airmet for mountain obscuration, and you'll notice it's highlighted green, which means it's active more than an hour before I go. So it's not going to be active during my time of flight. If it was active, and it actually shows you this VOR to this VOR to this VOR, if it's active during your time of flight, it will be red. And this is an airmet for low altitude, moderate turbulence. And it says it's active during my estimated passing times. But you can see it just barely one little corner of my route. And it's just barely touching just east of Palm Springs. So this is really great because if you've ever been a flight instructor, or you've ever been a student pilot, hearing there's an airmet from BVL to MTU to INW to Thermal to Shafter to Modesto to 40 miles east of Red Bluff to 70 miles northeast of Farmington to BVL, it's impossible to picture in your mind. So seeing it graphically displayed is really, really good. Now, I really do recommend for flight instructors that you disable the plain text briefing and you let people read it the old legacy way, because they may have to someday. They may have to get something that is a DUATS briefing, okay? So if I click on forecast, now the TAFs are green, the whole route, and it highlights the time period that you're going to be flying through based on your flight plan, which makes it really, really easy. If I click on winds aloft, oh, sorry, one more tab there. There's winds aloft. Again, it shows the altitude you filed, and it actually shows you on the map where every one of those winds aloft stations are based. So you can pick the ones you want to look at. Don't really care about PRC being Prescott. I'm really only concerned about Ontario when I take off, then Blythe, then Tucson, then El Paso. So I just look at the ones I want, and it shows you the different time periods, as well as altitudes plus and minus 2 and 4,000 in case you need to change to pick a better ride. Compared to the legacy or DUATS briefing previously available, this is just much, much easier to read. And by being able to see where each of those winds aloft stations are, it makes it just easier for you to read. Clicking on airspace, now you can clearly see that it looks like we're going to be going through some airspace, and you can pick the ones you want. If I click on some drone activity, the unmanned aircraft, this actually shows you, this first one is the purple little circle. It's active during my passing time, and I'm just north of that route. Gotta tell you, you should, if at all possible, stay very far away from drone activities. I have a dear friend, one of my best friends, who is my student, and he flies military drones. These things can hold a 9G turn at 300 knots. Trust me, you don't want to go through there if you don't have to. Or if you do, make sure you always get flight following and you try and take the shortest route through. You don't want to hang out in these places. You really, really don't. And then what I recommend after you've clicked all the little yellow tabs is while you're going through there, write down any questions you have and then call a briefer. I still call briefers after all these years of teaching and all these hours. I still call briefers all the time. I was flying near Oklahoma and saw an abbreviation in an area forecast that I'd never seen. So I called up the Lockheed Martin weather briefer and said, hey, and they go, hi, is this Gary? Are you calling about 49 or 401 Foxtrot? And I said, I absolutely am Gary, but I'm calling about a different plane. This, and I have a flight plan. And they pull up the flight plan. They go, okay, what can I do for you? And I go, well, look at the area forecast for Oklahoma. There's a thunderstorm warning, and it says TSFLCW. And I've never seen that abbreviation. He goes, oh, that's very common in Oklahoma. That means with our thunderstorms, we get flying cows. I said, okay, thank you very much. No kidding. I call these people all the time and go, I know it says this, but I have a question. Or I know it says this, when do you expect it to get better or worse? Are there any new PIREPs? So never be afraid to call them. You can always call them in the air on any flight service station. That's the 122.3s, the 122.4s, 5s. For Flight FlyQ, all the iPad things are great because they show you the nearest flight service station frequencies. Remember, EFOS Flight Watch 122.0 has been discontinued. Jonathan Kaiser has a great question. Can non-U.S. registered airplanes be used with 1-800-WEATHER-BRIEF? Absolutely, they can. Okay, let me just read a couple other questions. Okay, so now let's continue on. I can't answer every question, but I will do my best. Michael has a question. Can I open an account with no valid medical? Yes, you can. Okay, let's go to today's lesson. Let's talk about the cool advanced services. And these are just like the bonus. One of my favorites is ACAS, Adverse Condition Alerting Service. The big problem with getting a standard weather brief is it expires the second you close it or the second you hang up. What I mean by expires is if anything changes, you didn't know about it. You're still legally protected against FAA action, but you're not legally protected against going into turbulence that's newly forecast. It doesn't help, right? So being legally protected because you got a standard weather brief doesn't guarantee you being safe. So if at 12 o'clock I filed a flight plan for 4 p.m., got a standard weather brief, and it says VFR with no TFRs, am I legal? Well, sure, I got a standard weather brief. Let's do a timeline. 2 o'clock, 4:30, 2 weeks later. At 2 o'clock, a new firefighting TFR was added. At 4:30, you flew through the TFR and violated it. And 2 weeks later, you get a certified letter to your house saying, we need you to call and come into the FAA for a formal investigation. Now look, you're legally protected. You say, you call them up. If you ever get a letter from the FAA, please call them. Please don't ignore that. Not calling the FAA when they send you a letter is a lot like not going to traffic court. You're going to get in more trouble later. Just call them up. You can certainly call an attorney. I have several I recommend. AOPA has a legal plan. Even on our website, pilotsafety.org, you can ask one of our attorneys a question for free. But call them up and go, hey, what's up? Especially if you got a standard weather brief. Just tell them you got a standard weather brief. They can look it up and go, okay, thanks for coming in. You're done. But please call them. But you just don't want the letters. I've never been happy to get stuff from the FAA except my new pilot certificates. Or, hey, you won an award. That's always cool. But I don't want to get letters from the FAA. I'm really happy when they don't know they don't know about me. Only time I want the FAA to ever see my name is when I'm teaching a wings program somewhere. So ACAS, Adverse Condition Alerting Service, protects you from changes after the briefing all the way through the time you're supposed to land. And they'll tell you about temporary flight restrictions, Airport runways closed, unsafe NOTAMs. Hey, just because you got a standard weather briefing 3 hours ago doesn't mean the airport you're going to hasn't closed. Urgent PIREPs, SIGMETs, convective SIGMETs, airmets, center weather advisories, and severe weather warnings. And what they do is they just send you a text or an email all the way up until the time you're supposed to land, and could look like this. I filed a standard I filed a flight plan, got a standard weather brief. It said VFR the whole time up. But then what's interesting is I got a text message that when I clicked on it, took me to this. Hey, there's a new airmet for IFR. And it was IFR that was not included in the prior brief. So it's nice to get these warnings. Daniel has a question. Daniel, yeah, this video is going to be on pilotsafety.org under videos tomorrow. And you can watch it anytime for free. Paul Markovitz has a question. Is there a record of you getting a brief if you don't follow a flight plan? Yes, as long as you click standard weather brief. But there's no downside to filing a flight plan. And Patricia reinforces one of my great points is another good reason for flight following is you can check on updates as well. Great, Patricia, thanks. Let's talk about easy activate and close reminders. Now you have to pre-register for this stuff, but one of the biggest reasons that I think most people don't file open and close VFR flight plans is because it's a pain in the butt to, after takeoff, when you're really busy at low altitude doing a bunch of different stuff, to call flight service on the radio and go, hey, can you open my flight plan? Or to call them on the phone after you land and say, hey, can you close my flight plan? However, it's a huge safety factor when you don't use it. It's a huge safety factor. And the difference between you making it and not is if you open and close flight plans. If you don't file and open a VFR flight plan and anything gets hurt, they didn't find Steve Fawcett's remains for 2 years, and there's a lot of stuff out there that he probably survived the crash and then died of exposure and his injuries later. You don't want to be laying on a mountain dying of your injuries for a week because you didn't use a flight plan. There is no downside to flight plans if it's easy to do, and Lockheed Martin does it. I do want to really strongly emphasize a personal viewpoint of mine. Under no circumstances should you ever cancel IFR in the air before you land, and under no circumstances should you ever, ever, ever close a VFR flight plan before you land. I don't care how inconvenient it is for you or the controllers. There have been numerous case studies and accidents where people canceled IFR and landed at the wrong airport. I was going out of Midland, Texas a week ago, and I'm lined up ready to go, and the active runway is 10. And the controller said, Southwest flight blank, you appear to be lined up on runway 25 at Midland Air Park, a completely different airport 5 miles away. You know why Southwest was lined up on the wrong airport? Because they elected to do a visual approach. I never do visual approaches either. I stay on the instrument approach all the way in. Now look, I'm not bashing Southwest, but Southwest has landed at wrong airports before. Boeing has landed at wrong airports before, and I won't even tell you how many hundreds of private pilots have landed at military bases because they think it's the other airport. You stay on the instrument approach all the way to the ground. If you stayed on a charted instrument approach, you cannot land at the wrong airport. And that's not even the worst part, folks. I've got hundreds of people in the accident studies who closed a VFR or IFR cancellation before they landed and crashed 5 miles before their home airport, and nobody ever even looked for them because it's notorious especially if you're a busy professional pilot. And it's the professional pilots that do this most often. You're a busy professional pilot, you've been flying all day, you're 5 miles from your home airport, you can see your home airport, cancel IFR in the air, and then something goes wrong and they'll never even look for you until 2 days later. Always open a flight plan and never ever close or cancel the flight plan until after you're safe on the air, or safe on the ground. Okay? So this makes it really, really simple. If you're IFR and it's towered airport, they're going to close it for you. Now, air traffic control and control towers do not close VFR flight plans. You have to do it through Lockheed Martin, but let me show you how easy it is now. 30 minutes before I take off, I'm going to get an email and a text message that says, click here to open the flight plan. And that's what the text message does. So what I do, excuse me, I'm going to put you on hold for just a second. So what I do my pre-flight, I do the full run-up, I pull up to the runway, hold short bars, I pull out my cell phone, I click on open the flight plan, ta-da, your flight plan's open. And then once I land, I have an email and a text waiting for me that says, click here to close it. Especially because I fly a lot in the mountains. It's just easy for me to do this by text message or by email. At Big Bear, it's hard to get radio reception at Big Bear. So it's very easy for me to just click close. And then every so often when I click close, it'll go, hey, we don't know what you're talking about. It's a very rare glitch in the system. It doesn't happen very often, but it can. And all you have to do is you just call them. Call them 1-800-WXBrief and say, hey, I'm closing a flight plan from Long Beach to Big Bear. And they go, oh, yeah, it's already closed. And the very few times this has happened, it actually went through, but you just call them to verify. Okay, let me scroll through a couple quick questions. Now, sometimes, Kenneth actually has a great question, not about Lockheed Martin. Sometimes when I'm on an IFR flight plan, the approach controller gives me a visual approach. Yeah, that's fine. I just turned it down. I said I'd prefer the ILS. Remember, controllers always work for you, but not the other way around. So I just say, well, if it's okay with you, I'd like to fly the ILS, or I'd like to fly the RNAV. And they never care. I really do appreciate just staying on a flight plan the whole way in. Okay. So let's talk about my Spot device from Global Star, and DeLorme and Spider Trucks make cool things too. I prefer the Spot, but this is enhanced search and rescue, and this is only if you buy the additional gadget like a Spot device. The cool thing about my Spot is it talks to Lockheed Martin every 2 to 10 minutes, however you program it. And if you've ever stopped moving, it sends an automatic distress call. So let me show you how it works. This is the typical way people do it, and this is actually on an open flight plan. So you take off, and halfway between Hector and Needles, out in the middle of nowhere over mountainous terrain, at 3 p.m., you have an engine failure, you crash, you have a broken leg, and you're bleeding from the broken leg. Now, you weren't supposed to arrive until 4 p.m. So 30 minutes after you were supposed to arrive, and again, this is only if you file and open a flight plan. If you don't file with flight plans, they're never going to look for you. But at 4:30, because you filed and opened a flight plan, they're going to call your cell phone. Hey, you okay? Your cell phone doesn't work out in the middle of the mountains, and you don't answer. Then they're going to call Havasu Airport and your emergency contact. And your wife and your brother both have no idea where you are. And Havasu Airport says, no, he's not here. At 5 p.m., they're going to scramble the Civil Air Patrol. Now, you got really, really lucky today because tonight was the night of the Civil Air Patrol meeting, and they're already at Long Beach willing to go. Unfortunately, the CAP squadron at Havasu was disbanded, not enough volunteers. But hey, at Long Beach, the Civil Air Patrol is meeting that night. You get really, really lucky, and they start looking for you at 5:30. And by 5:30, they've cleared that grid box. And then by 6 o'clock, they've cleared those grid boxes. And by 6:30, they've cleared those. And by 7 p.m., they've cleared those. At 7:30, they've cleared those. It's now very, very cold. You're weak from loss of blood and about to pass out. And you've been laying there with a broken leg for, 5 hours by the time they've cleared those boxes. Don't worry, we'll get to you kind of, sort of, eventually. Sweet! They found you after only 7 hours in the mountains with a broken leg, cold, hungry, and dehydrated. Now, that's awesome, and it's better than waiting 2 years like Steve Fawcett did, but this is why I really, really recommend devices like the Spot from Globalstar. The Spot from Globalstar actually reports my position, and this is actually one of my track logs, that this is a flight from me up to Santa Rosa. It reports my position every 10 to 2.5 minutes, and this is how it works when I have my Spot turned on for this same exact flight. At 3 o'clock, you crash the plane. At 3:05, your Spot reports that you have stopped moving. 5 minutes later, they call your cell phone. Hey, did you stop for gas? You don't answer. And they dispatch search and rescue, the police helicopter, straight from Havasu to your last reported position, latitude and longitude, and you're rescued in only 45 minutes, which makes a huge, huge difference. Got to tell you, if you got a choice of laying on a broken airplane on a mountain with a broken leg, 45 minutes beats the heck out of a 7-hour wait. Now, a lot of people ask me about the 406 ELT things. Yeah, 406 ELTs are awesome. You should absolutely put one in your plane. But here's the thing. They don't always go off. An ELT is triggered by forward momentum. And if you drop in a vertical point or even some forward sudden stops, they don't always go off. I am the first one to admit I'm certainly not perfect. As a master instructor, Instructor of the Year for several states, and in the running for Instructor of the Year nationally, I landed a Cessna 182 at Long Beach last year, gear up. Look, the gear warning system did not work. I was using a written checklist, but there were lots of distractions, and it all comes down to I didn't put the darn handle down. And if you've never had a gear up landing, you will. If you've never made a mistake, you will. You'll make lots of them. And I did a really nice short field landing, and the ELT didn't even go off. ELTs don't go off every single time, and they may even be damaged significantly enough in the crash so they don't trigger at all, even if they were supposed to trigger. So an ELT or personal locating beacon are awesome, but the thing I don't like about the personal locating beacon is you have to trigger it, and you may not be able to. And Brian has a great point. Brian Cox, thanks for so much for being on here. And Brian says he's an active pilot for the Civil Air Patrol, and he says that clearing the box doesn't guarantee seeing the planes, and they actually search each box several times. Brian, thank you for your service to the Civil Air Patrol, and thank you for the comment. Jeanette says, well, I thought you always do flight following. And that's true, Jeanette, I do. But sometimes flight following drops you. Flight following doesn't tell you about every airplane near you, and they don't guarantee service the whole way. Everything's workload permitting. So even if I get flight following, they may drop me halfway or lose contact. So Nick Crincioni, I'm sorry about that if I messed it up. Do I always plan and file with 1800WXBrief? If I have the option, yes, but I do use ForeFlight and FlyQ a lot of times as well. Just Lockheed Martin is just better. And Jeanette says she crashed at Magic Mountain in 1992 and the Silver Patrol saved her life. Thanks, Jeanette. I appreciate that. All right, so let's go ahead and register for all these cool advanced services. And all you have to do is just add new row. And I'm going to put email. I'm going to put in my pilotsafety.org address. All of you are welcome to write that down and send me an email anytime. GaryR@pilotsafety.org. Remember, I volunteer for this organization, and if it takes me 3 days to get back to you, I'll get back to you, but it might take me 3 days. But you can send me a question anytime, GaryR@pilotsafety.org, and I'm going to select everything I want. Pre-flight alerts, in-flight alerts, easy activate, and easy close. Now, when I try and click on flight plan close reminder, it very clearly tells me that this is not working in Hawaii, Puerto Rico, or Alaska. There's been some issues especially in Alaska, where you close a flight plan with Lockheed Martin and the Alaska Flight Service is not notified and they start looking for you. So just remember, if you happen to fly in Hawaii, Puerto Rico, or Alaska, you need to talk with local flight service as well. Now, there are quite a few partners, but you have to select them to make it work. And this is an older list, but ForeFlight, FlyQ, and several other things work with them as well. Richard Chapman has a great question. Why do I use ForeFlight and FlyQ? Because I teach them both. And I'll talk about which program is best for most people a little bit later. This is something I really like as an instructor. Again, I will share flight plans with students, and I make sure that every time a student creates a new profile, that they add me, so flight plans can be shared with me automatically. Now, that's pretty much it for Lockheed Martin. They are an amazing website. They have a lot of videos online as well, and you can always ask me questions later. The question I get asked every time I do a webinar, and I just need to address it, is which of the programs is the best? FlyQ, WingX, ForeFlight, and Garmin. And I'm going to tell you, you probably can't tell me the difference between any of them anyway. They all do the exact same thing. Every iPad program I know does flight planning, weather, airport information, instrument approach plates, and georeference mapping. They all do the exact same thing. So which one's the best? Well, I think it kind of depends, and this is my personal opinion only, on you. If you're going to use an Android device, you probably need to pick WingX. ForeFlight, never ever going to be on Android. Just not going to happen. Most programs are never ever going to be on Android. No 121 airline will ever use an Android. Look, there's nothing wrong with Androids, but there's too many different manufacturers. 500 million companies make Androids. I can buy an Android tablet at Big Lots for $29. You can buy a great Samsung that's probably faster and better than certain iPads for $800 at an AT&T store. The problem is you just don't know. So it's hard to write programs when there's no quality or consistency in the actual device. Android is an operating system, not a device. iPads are only built by one people, and they've been pressure tested and extreme temperature tested, and they're awesome. So if you're just an Android fan, hey, that's great. Knock yourselves out. WingX is the best of the bunch. If you have all Garmin in your plane and a GDL88, you're probably using Garmin Pilot. Although ForeFlight also talks with Garmin now. But if you're just a hardcore Garmin person, hey Garmin. I don't think Garmin Pilot is the best iPad program, but it works very well with other Garmin avionics. But so does ForeFlight and some other stuff. If you're a professional pilot and you're flying IFR in and out of big airports all the time, I really recommend ForeFlight. I think it's the best for professional pilots because it does so many things. It does weight and balance, and it's got a built-in logbook, and there's a desktop program, and it's got all these features. However, as much as I love ForeFlight, and I'm a huge fan of theirs, and I've supported them ever since the beginning, I have a paid subscription that I just paid again for. I don't get it for free, I pay for it. It is the most complicated and hardest to learn. It is harder to learn than G1000 aircraft because it has so many features. So a lot of people download ForeFlight and get into a lot of trouble because they don't get professionally trained and they don't know how to use it. By far the easiest to learn, the fastest to learn, and the simplest to operate quickly has always for me been FlyQ. So if you're IFR certified and you're flying in and out of Bravo airspace and you fly a lot, I recommend ForeFlight. If you're an occasional VFR pilot, I really recommend FlyQ because it's simpler, because it has less features. It has all the basics, but it's easier to get to information quickly if you're not a professional. Now, all of these programs actually work with 1800Brief, a WXBrief. Seattle Avionics down the bottom, that's FlyQ. Obviously, you know about Garmin and ForeFlight and iFly and all that other stuff, and there's my spot. But let me ask you all a question. A G1000 is a complex glass panel system. It does flight planning, georeference maps, taxi diagrams, weather, and traffic. Would any of the instructors logged on tonight give the keys to a new private pilot and say, hey, watch a YouTube video and figure it out as you fly? No. You need professional training to be safe. And iPads are complex glass panel systems. They do all the same stuff. Flight planning, georeference maps, taxi diagram, weather, and traffic, and they require training to be safe. The biggest problem we have out there are their instructors who are teaching ForeFlight and other programs that they don't know how to use it because they've never been trained by professionals. Look, if you're gonna use a complex glass panel on your lap or built into the airplane, you need professional training. If you want to jump on, a really good start over at Pilot Safety is we have ForeFlight DVDs that are over 7 hours of training, and we have a FlyQ DVD that's about 90 minutes. You know, that's just saying something about the ease of use of FlyQ. You really do need about 7 hours of training to be really good at ForeFlight. To be really good at FlyQ, you need about 90 minutes. So again, if you're a hardcore instrument pilot, I recommend ForeFlight. If you're the occasional VFR flyer, I recommend FlyQ. Got to tell you, WingX and Garmin and all the other programs are just fine too. Those two are my personal favorites. If you're interested in learning more about ForeFlight, we're doing a webinar tomorrow. It is a paid webinar. It's one of the things that pays for all the free stuff we do. For $19, you'll be able to buy a DVD, or you can do a live webinar tomorrow. They'll talk about all the new prices, all the new features, including track locks, track logs, logbook, ForeFlight Web, which is the desktop version, and the graphical weather briefing, how it integrates with 1800WXBrief. Also, over at pilotsafety.org, if you'll allow me, again, we spend about $1,500 a month, and these are some of the ways we pay for all that stuff. You never have to buy anything from us, but if you like our stuff and would like to support us, we do about 10,000 people a year through Wings programs. There are paid webinars every month that are $19, and this is the schedule for 2016. You can also be a gold member and get all of them for free. And it's $49 or $59 a year to be a gold member, but it supports our safety missions. If you'd like to support me personally. Again, Master Flight Training. That's what I do for a living. And let's talk about the important stuff, pilotsafety.org, all the free stuff we do. Go on videos. You'll see a bunch of videos that are free and some that are paid. There is a a recording of this program that will be up tomorrow. There's an older one up there now, but this program will be up and it'll be free and you can look at it anytime you want. And don't forget, you can always click on Ask the Experts. So I'm going to go through a couple questions before I log off. John Bauer, another Civil Air Patrol pilot, make sure you leave your cell phone on. Even sometimes when you don't get great reception, they can still track you. So he recommends, and I do too, that you leave your cell phone on always always when you fly. Lots of people saying thank you, great job, all that good stuff. I appreciate it. And I want to tell everybody out there, whether you're watching a recording or you're seeing this live, you're the people that will reduce general aviation accidents. Less than 1% of accidents every year happen to people with a current wings phase. The reason we still have the same accident rates in general aviation that we've had for the last 40 years is that most pilots don't come to safety programs like this. Please share pilotsafety.org on Facebook and emails. Tell all the other pilots you know. Please grab a pilot that's never been and go to a local free class. We're going to be at Northwest Aviation Expo, Women in Aviation International, Sun and Fun, Oshkosh. My favorite show ever is Aircraft Aviation Expo in Palm Springs. We're even going to be in Puerto Rico. So bring people to some of these free classes. We would absolutely love to have you. And John Turner says, yeah, make sure the cell phone is not in airplane mode. That makes it easier to find you. Well, guys, I'm out of here for the night. It's been about an hour and a half. I think my voice is just about done. I really appreciate all of you. And if you ever need anything, email me anytime. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.